So this is Bingo, multiplayer cloud bingo with Scratch. I'm going to go over how to play it. It works. A little demonstration first. So each of these I'm going to get started. They all have the same URL. Just go to the project, you click the green green flag, and this joining game thing happens. And what it's doing is to negotiate who is the number caller. Number caller also plays, but only one person calls the number. So this one shows up as the number caller right now. The other ones are still loading. And I'll show you how that works later. So it uses text to voice to say where it is on the board, but you still have to press the mark it. So when you mark it, it turns a little bit red. It doesn't automatically mark anything for you. If you think you have a bingo, you press the button here. It makes a funny sound if you don't. And this one doesn't have it. No one has that. Basically, my bingo is it calls randomly 75 numbers. I 49, G 49. Anyways, if you miss, you're not paying attention. There's this list here you can go over. And you see it has a scroll bar. This is just a basic list display, and then down here on the left there's the call letter, which tells you which column it's in and the call number, the current number. So I'm just going to hammer this and fill them all in. If a number is not called, it doesn't stop you from marking a thing, and you can also unmark it. So you really got to pay attention. Down here, it says it uses cloud variables, and that's how it shares between all these different screens what's going on. I was having issues joining later, so I'll have to test that if you join mid-game. It also uses a text-to-speech. None of these are, they're plugins, but they're plugins that are built into the Scratch system. They're not anything extra. When you're out of numbers, the shot caller, the number caller, sees this out of numbers thing, but no one else does. They just see the last number called. And then anyone can, declare bingo at any time, but it only shares with everyone else when you actually have it. Now just keep an eye on these called boards here when I declare bingo. Now everyone has bingo because all the numbers are called, but basically bingo is a straight line. So it can go this way, it can go this way, or you can do a diagonal. This diagonal. Or this diagonal. And this number free thing is always checked. And these letters at the top don't do anything for you. So I'll declare bingo. And then what happened is the call boards will get cleared, and everyone will get a new board, and you just keep playing. Now, making a live video is a good time to test this. Let's see if this person leaves the shot caller, that someone else will become the shot caller. It should take about 10 seconds, Every 10 seconds it checks to see if you are the next in line to call the numbers. And then we'll take a look at the code. There it is. So it popped up. Seems to work. Let's try it out.
Under the N42.
Right on. And let's see if we make a new window. If someone joins late to the game, if they'll see the same stuff. Same numbers called.
Under the N42.
So they're seeing the number. That's great, and it calls it out. They might now become the next number caller. This is just part of how the multiplayer works. It chooses a random number, and if you're the lowest random number, then you call the numbers. Okay, so it's not. And then...
Under the N25.
Yeah, so that seems to work fine. Let's just call a few more numbers.
Under the N32. Under the G47. Under the N33.
If there is a bit of network lag, it will catch up. So it'll see the cloud variable, which is just these numbers all mashed together, and it'll put them in one at a time and read them out to you. All right, let's say... Join again here. I'm a new player. So here it's negotiating to see who calls the numbers. And this disappeared, so it must be the new guy. Has a lower number. So this one's going to have the lower number, but it waits for everyone to have a turn to see who does it. So it looks like this joining of the game cleared out all the fields, so that's not good. That's something to be worked on. All right, let's take a look at the code. There's 4 sprites and a backdrop. Backdrop doesn't have any code. The joining game just goes on until a certain event happens. So it just it does change costumes with the more or less dots. But it just sort of sits there and changes costumes until joining done is called. Bingo, this is the button. All it does is you broadcast bingo, and then it gets handled by the card. And here is the next number. Again, all it does is it broadcasts the next number when it gets clicked. But it waits till you're in control to show. And if you're not in control, it hides. So it checks again. It keeps checking throughout the game. Remember, once a new person joined and they were the new controller, then the next number thing disappeared, showed up on the other screen. So in Scratch you can store these things called cloud variables. I use 2, and all they are is numbers. So there's 2 that I use: users and called. So calls are a pair of numbers, and I'll show you how that looks when we play the game.
Under the G54.
So it adds 54.
Under the B9.
And then on the end it adds 09. So it adds 09, so each number takes up the same amount of space, so I can use the same code. Otherwise, it wouldn't know where to parse those 2 numbers. I'd have to add some sort of marker in between or make some sort of code. But since we're just using
the G54. Under the B9.
Since we're just using numbers. So we see this users things flicking and flashing. That's the different users here in the background, each randomly broadcasting their random ID, and whoever has the lowest gets control. In control is here, so when control is true, it will be false on all the other screens. And rando is your user number. So you look at this flicking back and forth, you see the other ones are all bigger than this one. So we can hide these cloud variables now. And we can stop the code even. So there's a few things that happen when you start the game. Yes, these buttons show up. It calls setup board, and we can go over that later. And the other thing that happens here is it tells you who the clone is or not. And basically all these grid squares on the board are clones of this sprite, but when I receive broadcasts, I only want them handled once, not on for each clone. So I have this isClone flag. Rando picks it, so this picks your user ID, and I want it to be 4 digits long. Just give enough randomness depending on how many users join up. I just don't want them to have collisions too frequently anyway. So now it broadcasts rando, so that means I have a user number and I want that handled by the game. Now in this loop, it's just broadcasting your random number to everyone else. So every 1 to 5 seconds, it'll put your random number up there. And the reason I off-space the time with the randomness is because if I had 2 users pushing numbers at exactly the same time, one might always overwrite the other one. You couldn't see it. So here in this broadcast receiving, we use the isClone check to see if you're the clone. So if you're not a clone, if you're just the starting sprite, then you handle it. If you're a clone, you just leave it alone. So here it sets isControl to false, and it goes in this loop forever, and it goes through it just looks at the random numbers to see if any other smallest number has been seen. It does a wait, 1 or 2 seconds between each look, and it goes through the loop 10 times to see if you're the smallest. If you are the smallest, it lets you in control. Okay, we're back. We just talked about how the multiplayer component works, where you join and figure out who's in control. So the main game loop is here, and it just checks the cloud variable. If the cloud variable is different from the local variable, we keep a copy of it, and then we're going to run through this main loop here. The sort of end state of the game is the cloud variable is different from the local one, and it's blank. Then we're going to kill all the clones and get a new board. But sort of the main loop here is each number takes up 2 spaces. That's why we have this divided by 2 here. And we just mash the 2 numbers together to get a working number. If it's less than 10, we trim off the leading 0. And then we call this new number function. If it's already in the called stack here, we've seen it before, so we're not going to add it. And bingo, you don't add the same number twice. So let's see, kill clones. Where is that? I don't even know if it's down there. Maybe at the top. Here. It just deletes whatever clone you are. So when you have a call number, it figures out which call letter to use based on the value of the number, and then it sets those values. It adds it to your called list here so you can see the history, and it also removes it from the uncalled list. So if you are calling the numbers, or if it's your turn next because someone left, and then you have an updated list of the numbers left to call. And then the final thing it does is it says it out loud. So under the G, 67 or whatever. So the other thing we do here is set up a board. So when the game starts, we initialize all our values, delete these lists. So a little bit about these lists. These are each of the lines in the board. So the diagonal lines, all the rows, and all the columns. And they contain the numbers that are in each of those lines. And this is so at the end of the game we can see if you have a line or not. So for 75 times, we just add the numbers 1 to 75 in the uncalled list. And then set up numbers. Let's see here, set up numbers. Really? Missed it. Set up board. Set up numbers. I guess I gotta scroll to the right. There we go. So set up numbers. Puts a number in each of these letter lists. And this is to generate the board, because you're gonna need 4 from 4 of them and 5 from 1 with the free spot. To make sure we're calling the right number. And then here we go, we're laying out, so this is the X and Y of each of the little squares. If I first start on the game here, you'll see it. For the first one, it's just the letters, first row. So this is the costumes. And then for all the other ones except the free one, it picks the costume. And then let's see here, pick costume. So depending on the letter, it'll pick from that list from setup numbers, and then it's adding to these sort of like winning line check lists throughout. So these are the diagonal ones, these are rows, and then the columns are added in line here. And then so it just goes throughout the whole grid there, adding the new numbers, creating a clone of itself. So the other thing that happens is you press that bingo button, and so what it's going to do here is go through each of these line lists and make sure that the called numbers are, every number is in the called numbers. And then at the very end, if it finds that, yeah, one line at least has all those numbers, then it'll play the good sound and call setup board. Now, sort of a bug that I saw was that the setup board clears this called numbers. That's bad. We should do that only when you get the bingo. Okay, thank you.